Well, we have a special guest star for our first segment today, don't we?
Yes, what is our first segment?
It is Explain It Like I'm Five.
This is so great. There's all these complex topics. And yes, we have a special guest star. So what are we talking about today?
Okay, so let's go all the way back to the basics and building blocks of Personal Finance Club to a question I have a feeling you get quite a lot.
What is the best indexed fund?
What is the best index fund? And can you explain the answer like I'm five or maybe even like I'm four?
So that adorable voice you just heard was my son, Mateo, who is 4. I made him repeat after me to get him to say it because he does not know what an index fund is. But I have heard some feedback that the Explain Like I'm 5 section is still too complicated. So I'm going to try to really keep it simple. And so to understand what an index fund is, you have to understand what a stock is. A stock is buying a piece of a company. And so imagine if you go and buy a bottle of Coke. There's a Coke company that, produces it, ships it, bottles it, markets it. They make Coke. And there are owners of the Coke company. Not one person doesn't own the entire company. It's owned by lots of people, and it's tracked by shares in the company. And so you can buy a share of Coke. And you can basically buy a share of basically any company you've heard of. Any of these big companies are generally called publicly traded companies, which means you can buy them as a member of the public. And so you could buy Coke, you could buy Nike, you could buy Home Depot. All these stores you see, you can buy shares of the company. And so it begs this question, which shares do you buy? Which companies do you buy? And I'm going to spare you the entire reasoning, but the best answer, in my opinion, is to buy all of the companies. Instead of picking and choosing and guessing the companies, you buy all of them in what's called an index fund. An index fund is basically like a big basket. So if you were going to go to the grocery store and imagine that every item on the shelf, instead of being the item, it's a share of the company that makes the item. So instead of buying Coke, you could buy a share of Coke. Instead of buying Campbell's soup, you buy a share of Campbell's soup, etc. You can put everything in the entire grocery store into your one basket. That's an index fund. It's buying all of the companies that make all the products and services of the world. When you buy an index fund, you're basically guaranteeing yourself your fair share of all the market growth, of the growth of all these companies. And so the question that, when I give that short pitch about what is an index fund, I often get a question like Mateo asks, which is, okay, so what's the best index fund? And the way I like to picture it is like, let's say you go back to the grocery store and you buy your Coke, you buy your Campbell's soup, you buy Kraft mac and cheese. That question's kind of like saying, what's the best grocery store from which to buy these items? And the answer is, it doesn't really matter. Everyone's going to have Coke, everyone's going to have Campbell's, everyone's going to have Kraft's. And so it doesn't matter which brand, if whether you go to a Safeway or a Kroger or an Albertsons or a Vaughn's. I don't know if these grocery stores make sense to you because depending on where you live in the country, they all have different names, but they're all kind of owned by the same people, I think.
I didn't know you would
But
know
yeah,
Kroger. That's East Coast.
Kroger is Michigan. That was my OG
Oh yeah,
Michigan grocery store. Yeah.
Kroger's
Yeah.
Ralph's out here. I see sometimes
Yeah.
the labels. Anyway, go ahead.
And a little fun fact, you can take your Kroger card and you can use it at like Safeway, at Ralph's. I think even at Vaughn's, it's like the same company has just rebranded all these different grocery stores. Don't
Pro
quote me on the
tip.
exact, but yeah. Or you can I just type in a phone number and you can type in Jenny's phone number, 8675309.
I
And
was
then
like, are you
whoever,
calling me Jenny now? Hold up. Okay, got you.
Jenny. Oh,
I got
Tommy
you,
Two Times
Jenny,
from the 80s
Jenny.
back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a music reference, Jen. That's my first and last music reference on this show.
Proud of you.
A one-hit wonder from 1984. That's how current I am.
Amazing.
So anyway, to answer the question, what's the best index fund? The answer is it doesn't matter. If you go to any of these different grocery stores, you're gonna get all the same groceries. And in fact, I'll show a chart on the screen right here. I took the 10 or so most popular index funds in the U.S. and they're pretty different from each other. So in this list is VOO, ITOT, VTI, VTSAX, IVV, VFINX. Like you might recognize some of those ticker symbols, you might not, but they differ a lot because some of them track 500 companies, some of them track 3,000 companies, some of them are ETFs, some of them are mutual funds. And this is kind of the confusing landscape, which leads to this question, what's the best one? And when you chart them all on top of each other, Jen, can you tell me what that looks like? Are you looking at the chart right now?
They're on top of each other.
It looks like a single line. Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
on top of each other. If you like squint, you can kind of see some differences like over, the course of 10 years, which might just have to do with like the fees that they charge, or maybe if they're, slightly bigger or smaller companies, but because they track a bigger or smaller index. But basically, any index fund that's tracking the US stock market is going to perform about the same. And so when choosing the best one, it's not really about one's going to perform better than another. It's just picking one that trades free with your brokerage. So you wouldn't want to buy a Vanguard mutual fund in a Fidelity account because you'll get hit with a transactional fee. So you want to trade free, no transaction fees. In the US, all ETFs trade free with all brokerages. A little bit confusing. We'll jump into ETFs versus mutual funds on another episode. But yeah, make sure it trades free with your brokerage, and just make sure it's a broad market, low fee index fund. You can look up the expense ratio associated with it, and it should be around 0.2% or lower. Anything below 0.2%, I would say, is in the good range. And a lot of these are like 0.03%. It doesn't really matter when you're that low. If it's 0.03 or 0.05, that's not going to make much of a difference in your life. And that's it. So no best index fund, just buy one that is the broad market and stick with it for the long term. So I don't know. It's really hard to explain these like I'm 5.
Well, my
maybe
question
Mateo's
to you
voice
is,
inspired us.
how much of that do you think Mateo would understand?
None. But he's
None.
4.
He's 4. In your defense, he's 4. Okay.
He
Well, we'll
can
keep
count
trying.
he can count to, at least to 20, and then from there on, it kind of gets a little bit chaotic, but there's a lot of right numbers in there. But yeah, you kind of got to have counting down before you can get to index funds, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, well, I'm proud of you for trying. We'll keep simplifying as much as we can, or you will, honestly.
He might have understood the grocery store thing, that, putting in groceries in baskets. That's kind of like good for a 5-year-old. Buy all the groceries.
Okay, I'll ask him what he thinks.